Hi, I'm Anthony Newbold. Welcome to A Closer Look. My guest this week is the Minister of Social Services and Urban Development, the Honorable Frankie Campbell. Minister, welcome again to the show.
Thank you for having me back.
We always have a good time. That's why I know. Thank you for coming and talking to the Bahamian people again. I was going to ask you about being out from under the shadow of Dorian, but I guess we're all going to be there for a little while. And I looked at your release from last week. What made you decide, you, the ministry, what made you decide to explore this option of moving people out of those shelters?
Brother Newbold, we have to appreciate that nothing is done in isolation, notwithstanding the fact that the humanitarian side of this relief is predominantly within the Ministry of Social Services. We have to ensure that the collaboration with all the other ministries factor into our decisions. And so you would appreciate that the Campbell Isaacs Gymnasium is an integral part of our sporting culture, is an integral part of, for example, Hugh Campbell is being announced and advertised for next month, I think around the 17th.
Yeah.
That is an event for the past however number of years have been held in the Campbell Isaacs Gymnasium.
Yeah.
And so having persons there through no fault of their own has impeded and interrupted a number of events that would have already been scheduled, that are long-standing. And so we're satisfied that it is time.
It's time to do it. In the first instance here, we're talking about moving how many persons to the Ponciana Inn?
Right now, there are in excess of 280 persons at the Campbell Isaacs Gymnasium. If we could get the configuration of families right, 4 to a room would allow us to put about 200 persons in the Ponciana arena.
How many shelters are presently open right now?
Right now, 2 shelters.
2 shelters.
Campbell Isaacs and the Bahamas Academy Auditorium on Wolf Road.
You've had these shelters running for a while.
Since the inception, September 6th,
Dorian.
5th, thereabout, yeah.
What does this cost the Bahamas government to operate these shelters?
There have been costs for manpower, human resources, over time, not just in New Providence, but throughout, over time, and that is a topical issue, but over time will be in excess of $600,000. However, there's been no direct cost or payment for the facilities, mindful that many of them would have been donated by churches and other faith-based organizations. And in the case of the Campbell Isaacs Gymnasium, it belongs to the government.
To the government. You had to add staff to deal with this, or you've been using your regular staffers?
Predominantly our regular staff. We've had a number of volunteers who I'm hoping that we can get together and say a real sincere word of thanks and gratitude. Their services have been invaluable. The Red Cross, in the case of the gymnasium, their regular staff remain on board to help with the management and the cleanup, etc.
Talking about the gymnasiums, Campbell Isaacs Gymnasium, there's been some concern raised about disease or outbreak of disease at that facility. What is the story down there?
We're fortunate to be in collaboration with the Ministry of Health. And the Ministry of Health had and continues to have representation around the clock in the persons of medical practitioners. And so there have been isolated incidents, but I've had the continued assurance of the Minister of Health that there has been and there is no outbreak of any communicable disease in the gymnasium.
Talking about the gymnasium still, we're going to stay there for a minute. allegations. You know how the stories go. Some allegations about corruption with overtime and unsanitary conditions, you know, bad treatment of those people in there. Speak to me about that, because, again, those are concerns that some people have raised.
Well, let me speak about the question of overtime. It is a burning question, and there is no doubt in my mind that there have been many hours of overtime worked. And those persons are rightfully anxious to be paid. But there must be checks and balances. In the initial aftermath, there was a question about, is it actual overtime? When were government offices ordered closed and then reopened? And so you would imagine that during the closed period, any work was overtime.
Yeah.
And then when government offices would have been ordered open, only the after 5 p.m. is considered overtime.
Yeah.
And so there had to be some checks and balances to ensure that persons got what was entitled to them, no more, no less. Because at the end of the day, questions will be asked, particularly relative to the finances. There will be audits, and persons who are responsible for authorizing these funds want to know that they can substantiate and stand by the decisions that were made. So I want to assure all persons that are concerned about overtime, it is coming. It is coming in the soonest time, maybe as early as this week.
Maybe as early as this week.
Yes.
Abusive behavior, unsanitary conditions, any validity to those charges?
You know, you get 4 or 5 persons together and they have a meal. If they don't clean up after themselves, there is an immediate mess. And so think about 300, 400, 500. Yes, there were times when there was a mess, and there were times immediately afterwards, even immediately after. Imagine you clean up after breakfast, and then there is lunch and a mess is made. So there's a continuous mess being made, but there was continuous cleanup. We had to increase garbage collection. We had to increase electrical generation. We had to increase water supply, because this was an unprecedented situation that we had not prepared for. So it was fluid, and we adjusted as situations arose. I think being able to have that many persons in such closed quarters and maintain order, prevent fights, prevent arguments. There were a few. You have situations where only 2 persons are together and there's an argument.
At home.
But whatever arose, we were able to deal with it. Our people were able to deal with it and contain it. And we are where we are. And I'm proud of where we are. I'm proud that there were lessons to be learned, because I'm satisfied, based on the scientists, that we're going to have future occurrences.
Yeah.
And we would have learned enough to help us should we be faced with the same situation.
Because you're going to have to do something again,
Yes.
in all likelihood.
Yes.
Talking about those shelters, any illegals there? Because again, there were some illegals in the shelters.
Yes.
A lot of them, according to some people, they just walked out and went about their merry way.
Mr. Newbold, that is a question that comes up from time to time. In the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, the concern was for human life, human safety. The Ministry of Social Services is the humanitarian arm of the government. As such, we're concerned primarily with the 3 basic needs of man: food, shelter, and clothing. We responded to that call. We gave certain assurances that in the event of a disaster within the territory of the Bahamas, we will do what we can for who is here. And so as as the Ministry of Social Services, we did not attempt to single out or to determine who is who, other than there is a human being in need of assistance and we assisted.
Keep the thought. You got to take a break.
Go ahead.
We'll finish it when we come back. We'll be back. We'll be speaking with the Minister of Social Services and Urban Development, the Honorable Frankie Campbell. We'll be back after this. Welcome back. You're watching A Closer Look. I'm Anthony Newbold, speaking with Minister Frankie Campbell, the Minister of Social Services and Urban Development. We were talking about the shelters.
Yes.
And containing who was there in the emergency that we had.
Right, as I would have indicated, we would have been predominantly concerned about the humanitarian needs, and we responded to that. You would also appreciate that in that regard, these shelters were never intended to be or to be treated as detention centers or camps. There was always freedom of movement within the confines of the rules that would have been put in place, that kind of thing. And so, yes, persons left. There are some who said that they weren't coming back. There are some who indicated that they would have been leaving with family members. But there are others, like the 9 lepers, who just left and never said where they were going, never even said thank you. But we're satisfied that we would have done our part.
Yeah. Ponciana, that's transitional housing.
Yes.
You sending these people back to where they came from, Abaco primarily. They ready to receive these people in Abaco?
Well, again, I speak to the collaboration of the various governmental agencies, and that ultimate goal and objective is hinged on a sister ministry providing what is necessary on that side for the transition. It is anticipated, though, based on the communications that we're having continuously, that the 90-day period set to be in Ponciana will be sufficient for the transition.
To do whatever they need to do.
Yes, yes.
I understand as of today, as people are seeing this program, there are going to be some extra people on the ground to assist specifically with requests for hurricane relief.
Yes.
Those going to be your people, or those going to be people from this new Reconstruction Authority?
No, they're going to be persons that are hired by the Ministry of Social Services. It is a temporary project that we could extend if we find necessary, but we've come to appreciate that the additional workload to the staff at Social Services is causing added frustration. You would have seen the newscast from Grand Bahama yesterday evening, and I've learned that that had gotten to a point where you couldn't look past it anymore. And so I'm satisfied after meeting with the management team that if there is a separation in terms of where various requests are being made and who's taking the requests, because some of those requests, particularly as it relates to hurricane relief, they're more of a formality. They won't require the intense scrutiny that the normal day-to-day requests require. And so we're satisfied that by separating them, we can shorten the turnaround time, which I'm hoping would be anywhere from 48 to 72 hours. Once we verify the basics that need to be verified, then let's go ahead and give the relief.
Yeah, and then you're talking about basic hurricane
Yes.
Supplies.
Yes.
And I'm presuming this is part of the effort to make sure that when these people get back to these islands, they are properly received.
Yes. Well, this assistance is going to be in place in the islands. In Grand Bahama, for instance, effective Monday 27th, there would be a group of persons there. Same thing in Abaco. And I'm also considering a second location, so we could have 2 locations in Grand Bahama. So it's not just persons who are here that want to transition, persons who are there that are dealing with situations there.
Yeah. Let's talk about macro, broad, your ministry. I know you have some goals, been, sidelined by Dorian.
Yes.
But you got some goals for your ministry, and I noticed that high on your agenda is personal training and personal development. How do you intend to pursue this particular objective?
Well, I'm of the mindset that if the team is happy, if the team is comfortable, then productivity increases and the clients leave smiling.
Yeah.
So I want to start with the comfort of the team. We spent a great portion of 2019 working on a career path for our social workers. We're very near. We're so confident that we would resolve it within this fiscal period, that the funds are in the 2019-2020 budget. We're only trying to fine-tune some small details. So that is the first thing we want to do, change the career path. That would increase salaries because they would go up to a different salary scale. There is a title we have there, Trainee Welfare Officer. We need to get rid of that. So we're working to get rid of that. Imagine someone being on a job for 10 years, 15 years, and they're still being referred to as a trainee. That
not
title,
good.
It's not good. That title is not good for morale.
Yeah.
And we're making some other adjustments. We're also looking at the flow, if I could use that term, the way things happen from the point of application to the point of the service being rendered. And we realize that there are some things we can do in the middle to remove the bottleneck, which reduces the frustration for both the service provider and the person seeking the service.
We're going to talk some more about this, but we got to take this final break, and we'll be back in a moment with the Minister of Social Services and Urban Development, the Honorable Frankie Campbell. Welcome back to A Closer Look. I'm Anthony Newbo, speaking with Minister Frankie Campbell. We were talking about what you're doing with respect to training, personal development.
We want to intensify our relationship with the University of the Bahamas, not so much for the training, because our people are qualified, bachelor's, master's, etc. But we want to be more research-driven. We want to be more data-driven. And so our relationship with the university would be to help us carry out certain studies to enable us to make certain projections and to be more proactive. We also want to ensure that part of our program of assisting is assisting persons to no longer need assistance.
Yes, my next question, which was, how are you helping to empower those people you come in contact with? Because otherwise, you're serving these people for 15, 20, 30 years, and they continue to need assistance as opposed to being able to fend for themselves.
Even as we speak, the team is going through some files to try and identify persons who are still at an age and stage in their lives that their skills can be improved. That would then empower them to be more independent. That would then cause them to be removed from the assistance program and maybe help us to assist others.
Yeah, and you're talking about your relationship with other agencies, etc.
Yes.
Because I'm thinking there's some people you come in contact with. Maybe you can arrange to have them take courses, whether it's plumbing, drafting.
You know, persons just need to be sufficiently inspired to consider the many options that are available. Small business development funds are available, grants are available, It may require improving your skill. It may require getting certain certifications. We're prepared to help with that and to collaborate with the various agencies to drive persons in the right direction.
We talk about broadly about assisting persons. We also talk a lot about young people and children, which is important.
Yes.
What are you doing with the old people?
There's a special place in my heart for our senior, more experienced persons. First of all, I have a great sense of gratitude for the contributions that they would have made. I'm ensuring that they get the respect that they deserve. I'm pleased to say that the legislation for the protection of older persons is now at the Attorney General's office for their final review. And I'm hoping that within this fiscal year, which means between now and June, July,
yeah,
we can lay the draft on the table of the House and send it out for consultation. We're also doing the same thing with the legislation for the protection of persons with disabilities.
And again, as you move forward, and this is a very important question, one that we've gotten from our online viewers, that you are going to be driven by data.
Yes.
Because the decisions that you make,
Yes.
because people question decisions that everyone makes, certainly that governments make. How did you come to that decision?
Well, I was taken aback to find out that in some of our institutions, in some of our centers, not just in social services, but throughout the government, persons are still writing in those big blue books.
Yeah.
This has allowed, in some instances, are being exploited, where persons go from one center to the next center to the next center, and they get the assistance that they would not have gotten had we been digitized and been able to pick up from entry that this is Frankie Campbell, who's just been to the center on Wolf Road and who was assisted. And so if people behave the way we behave when we go to the buffet, there may be a situation where not enough is left for someone who really needs.
Yeah.
And so this is the kind of data that will help us to ensure that the playing field is level, that no one falls through the crack because we're able to check on them even if we don't see them.
And of course, you're talking about data to reconfigure, however you have to do it, the ministry to meet the needs of a 21st century Bahamian.
Yes, yes.
All right?
And so I've promoted partnerships. We continue to invite partnerships. That is going to be the one thing that gives us the ultimate success. Interagency, faith-based individuals, persons with ideas and suggestions, persons who have programs that have worked that we can collaborate for the greater and ultimate development, because we're not just about social assistance.
Right.
We're also about social development.
Thank you again, Minister, for coming. And thank you for watching A Closer Look. Remember, you can watch us on Facebook and YouTube. We've been speaking with the Minister of Social Services and Urban Development, the Honorable Frankie Campbell.